Faith is a lifestyle. It is the mountain on which you stand that makes you believe that a dream is actually attainable. It is the concrete evidence that makes the logically impossible seem completely tangible. It seemed hopeless, but faith. I can't prove it, but faith. I can't explain it, but my faith has given me peace.
I'm a Christian with $100 million vision. Can nobody box me and say that's a contradiction? Goal driven, God just blessed me with the ambition. Look up when there is, he rests the definition.
Ladies and gentlemen, before I start today's show, before I get into the content of which is on my heart today, I just want to say thank you. Through this show, you guys are stuck there, and we always have good conversations about what should happen, what should go on, how the world should be, how the world should look. And I just want to say thank you for your support, because without it, this means nothing. Without your support, I'm just a guy talking in front of a camera. But with your support, we can accomplish stuff. So I just want to say thank you. Thank you to everybody who is tuned in to Shawn Riff-Raff Studios. For everybody that watches this show on Facebook or Twitter or YouTube or all of those things, do me a favor. You know, when this show is over, go on over to ShawnRiffRaff.com. Look at everything that we do there. We've got about, I think, 5 shows at this point, and we're just growing on a regular basis. Head over to ShawnRiffRaff.com. And check out what Shawn Riff-Raff Studios is really about. It's just expression. It's expression from a Christian point of view, and it's great that to understand that all Christians are not the same. And that is a wonderful thing, that all Christians are not the same. So to talk is really to see different perspective and to see different points of view, and we can have different points of view and yes, still be children of God and still be saved and sanctified and filled with the Holy Ghost, as they say in church. I'm going to have a really important conversation today. It's going to be really, really cool. I've got a really special friend that's going to help me have this conversation. This is not the kind of conversation that you want to miss. That's why I got my thank yous out in the beginning. This is the Elevation Podcast. My name is Shawn Riff-Raff. Let's go. King.
Royalty, stand up, brand up, fam up, hand out, no way, hands up, know what, name that, it's mine, claim that, it's time, message, we shine, above all, the decline, the darkness cannot last, the shadow of my past, before I gain knowledge of heritage, I have the bloodline that I share, most powerful out here, the mover of mountains is who I am touting, the richest among us is who I'm the son of, from sundown to sun up, that's how I then come up, position is just mine, the favor in due time, can't have it, man, you lying, the powerless, you trying, enemy beneath me, there's nothing to teach me, the people receive me, cause my God complete me, and my God does keep me, and my God that free me, and my God redeem me, and my God relieve me, I'm king, the dominion, crown me, I am winning my position, God's giving, God's in it, God's king.
And with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, this is the Elevation Podcast. I'm really thankful that we've all got an opportunity. I think a lot of us have our itching or aching. I think we're empowered and emboldened right now. We're itching and aching to have a conversation, to talk, to speak what's on our minds. And I'm happy right now that I have someone that I respect as intellectual and studied to really have a conversation with me. You've seen him before here on the Elevation Podcast. His name is Mark Tatum. What's up, brother?
I'm good, man. How you feeling? You all right? You good?
I'm good, man. I cannot complain at all, considering. Man, there's so much to unpack, so much to talk about. My first question to you, just a thought that's in my head, is like, why now? Why do you think? See, for the last 3 weeks or so, this, and I guess for African Americans or for Black Americans, this is nothing new. This is a conversation we've been having for generations. But why do you think it's such a push to it from other cultures? Why do you think that now was the time for that?
Um, short answer is the coronavirus pandemic.
Sure.
The fact that we've been all quarantined for the past what is it, 90 days, so
Right.
80, 90 days. So the fact that it's a few different things that are happening because we've been quarantined, we've been forced home or enforced in quarantine isolation.
Right.
um, and thankfully we've had the internet. Thankfully that didn't go down or anything like that.
True.
But what also is happening is social media. This is the age. This is the golden age of social media, where
Right.
we can share, we can stream, and that sort of thing. So these injustices, not only are they being streamed as they were before, as social media was coming up, but now it's our 24/7 news cycle. Now
True.
now we're seeing it on our feed, and we're sharing. So this was like the perfect storm for all of us to sit down, both black, white, whatever color, sit down and see, like, wow, this is really happening. This is actually reminiscent of how the civil rights era got its lift in the early 60s, when the injustices that were happening in the South started to become televised.
Sure.
Back then they saw, like, wait a minute, they're really putting hoses on people, they're really sicking dogs on people. Like, where did they do that at? Well, the South. So that was back then, and then that's where people started to join forces, and that's how, back, like I said, in the early 60s, that's how that movement got its lift. So that's where we are today, because it's being televised, it's being, it's on the internet now, and we're all forced to see it. Everybody's now realizing, I mean, better late than never, but they're now realizing, like, whoa, this is god awful. You know what I
Right.
mean? So I think that's kind of where we are with it today.
I think the narrative that we are past this is a stunning reality to a lot of people, that we aren't. And I think there are a lot of people fooled by the American narrative that we can just not talk about things and it will work itself out. And I said this yesterday on a show, but I really feel like what we do is we talk about the most overt thing as if it's the problem. And there is a lot of, slavery was over 100 and, 40 years ago, 442 years ago, slavery was over. And the interesting thing about this is the understanding that slavery is not America's worst evil, and that racism is actually America's worst evil, because America's worst evil will justify every single vile act in the world, right? And so we justified racism through, we justified slavery through racism. We've been justifying murder through racism. We've been justifying everything. Racism is the covert little thing that can, sneak into a conversation or be slipped into a bill, or, what I'm saying? Like racism is that the thing that can, it's nuanced into stuff, and therefore it's hard to point out because it's nuanced into so many parts of our society. And I think that it's the thing that is coming to the forefront. It is the thing right now that is really coming to the forefront because the videotape is showing a man killing someone else, and it's not, you can't speculate on that particular tape. You can't speculate on that one, right? Because you can sort of speculate on the Ahmaud Arbery one because you didn't, it was jumpy and you couldn't really see what was going on, so you can make up these stories, as to,
Right.
you know what happened, and you can, while we have been saying no, it's obvious right there, A plus B is C. We've been saying that for generations, but people who want to believe in a broken system will argue and protect it regardless of how much sense or nonsense what your argument is making. This one left no room, right? there was a camera looking at someone for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, right? So minute one, the camera was looking at him, and minute 8:40, the camera is still looking at this person. And so there is
Heartbreak.
no argument that can be had. The only thing you can do is discredit and disqualify, uh, 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 George Floyd, which people have tried to do. The only thing you can do is discredit and disqualify him, which it ain't working. Because the video doesn't show
So
nothing he did. The video shows someone killing him.
to your point, um, we're looking at the symptoms, and
Yeah,
these are pretty severe symptoms.
yeah,
I man, I'm gonna call it for what it is. What we saw in that 846 video. That was a lynching. That was a
right,
public lynching by any standards. Um, and yeah, we got to saw it. We got to see it on we get to see it on internet. But to your point, um, I saw another quote that kind of sums it up. We the discussion is not about a few bad apples. The discussion we have to look at the root of the problem. The quote went like, "It's not about a few bad apples. The point is about a diseased tree. Like the apples from whence they grew.
right.
That's the problem, not the apples themselves. And so we're just looking at the symptoms of the problem
Sure,
when we need to really dive deeper into what the core of the problem is.
absolutely.
And there's and a lot of people get lost in that because it's so complex, it's wide, and yes, we can put a title on it. It is racism. Um, and that springs forth a lot of things. The Christian in me, also sees a little bit deeper. Also, there's a spiritual application. There's a spiritual warfare component that goes along with that. Man is still responsible. I don't want it to be said that we can blame it all on the devil. No, you
Sure,
know, man, the hatred that mankind has in his heart, he's still culpable in these injustices. But there's a very heavy spiritual warfare behind all of this too. But back to your point, we do need to look at the root of the problem, and then we can talk about how to fix everything from the ground up, that all the way to the symptoms.
right. To your point about bad apples, one thing that I've come into the understanding of is and the reason that I'm forced into this type of empathy is because I've have so many friends that are in law enforcement in one way or another. Whether they're friends that are police officers, or whether they're friends that are lawyers, or whether they're friends that are judges. I have friends in all a bunch of different
Yep.
places in the justice system. And one of the things that I have to reckon with is the friends that I have in the justice system. One, a lot of them are black, and two, I don't personally consider them individually racist.
Right.
However, we deal with a system. We deal with a racist system that turns in that will teach and train an individual, a good individual, because most people who are police officers, right, don't get into it for the money, because it ain't really no money in being a police officer.
Right.
Um, so you're not, people are not. It's not like a political. It's not like dealing with somebody who was in the federal government or a Secret Service agent or something like that. A Secret Service agent can aspire to be somewhere in politics and all of that stuff. Police officers typically aren't. And so, you know, you're dealing with a lot of people that are doing this because they want to. They feel like they're going to make a difference in the streets. They feel like, that type of thing. But they're indoctrinated in a way that teaches good people that will turn good people into monsters or turn good people into killers, and that could, and the weaker ones are the ones that are turned the most into monsters or killers, and I don't know that it's necessarily overt racism from the individual point of view, but there are people who believe in a racist system, and that particular system will turn a person into like the person into a non-thinking murderer, right? Because racism in and of itself, to be a racist, doesn't kill anyone, right?
Right.
In and of itself, that's just an opinion that you have of superiority in a race, and that doesn't kill anyone. But what happens is there is a system. While we watch this guy who, put a knee on someone's neck for 8 minutes, right, in front of his coworkers, right? His
Yeah.
coworkers just watching, just to standing there, right? There were witnesses just to watching, street full of people just to watching. There were, people having cameras. This guy knowingly had a camera. He knew he had a camera on him,
Right. Right.
and it didn't change. It didn't change anything. Like it changed nothing. And so, how callous do you have to be? Even someone who is completely and absolutely racist is not that stupid, right? Because you have to be cognizant of the rules in one way or another. But the truth is, when you're indoctrinated into a system where you believe you literally believe in what you're doing, and I feel like what we see happening is we see good people, not this guy, but we see good people, will defend a system, will defend a system that indoctrinates them to do evil things, and we'll just keep, and that same system makes us hate the individual, right? It will make us hate the individual and make the individual rail against us. When the truth is, the devil is not in either one of them. The truth is, the devil is in this system playing us against each other, and
Yep.
and which is crazy, because I got friends, and I have to be empathetic towards police officers, because they on the streets getting shot at by gangs, right? Because we're not insinuating at all that bad black people don't exist, or we're not insinuating at all that there aren't criminals in all areas of the world. But what we're seeing here is a system that is unjust to a lot of people, and so
So
go ahead.
I'm sorry, real quick. I'm just gonna say to your point. Yeah, I too have. I know some folks who have a criminal defense lawyer friend,
Sure.
a future brother-in-law who's on a DC force, um, and he's black. He's a brother, and so I know, and I saw an article in the Washington Post the other day. They, especially the black ones, they're struggling right now because,
Yeah.
like, as you understand, they took an oath, they signed up to protect and serve, but they're just like how you said, they're within a system of indoctrination that's just so that's cancerous, and
Yeah.
so like they have a job to do, but yet the outfit, the system that they're in is almost antithetical
Right.
to their core beliefs, but they still want to do their job, and so so for like the guy that I noticed on the force, he's getting yelled at, F12, F12, but he's standing there to make sure that that they're okay. Like he's there to actually protect and serve, but
Sure.
he's getting cut in the face. So I do know that's a hard plight. But just to talk about the evils of the system, and I do think you're correct. Spiritually speaking,
Hmm.
and I know some folks may not get down with the spiritual perspective, but
Sure.
you know, uh, as a Christian, I have to say, but like to your point, the devil is in the system.
Yeah.
He's in that indoctrination piece. I saw on good record there were the police training videos down in Florida. Their target practice, the little paper that you hold up and shoot at, they had images of young black men in dreads in
Right.
target practice. And I'm like, what does that do to their psyche?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like when it comes to a life or death situation, and you're all you're seeing is images of young black men, like so. And I don't know who was on that force, but that came up in the news, and of course that got hushed away. But that's the kind of system that they're working with.
Right.
Another case was when in Baltimore, some known Klansmen were joining the force, in Baltimore. Like, so how do they rectify that? How do they reconcile that, rather, of knowing folks who have this kind of moralistic like failure, and somehow they're letting them in somehow, so that's the system. So again, not blaming any one person, but
Right.
just looking how the system is complex and just it's cancerous, and it wasn't meant for us, man, and
Right.
it needs a whole rehaul, man.
And to that point, there is, it was one Baltimore police officer that that came out with a whole thing, um, around Trayvon Martin, I think, uh, and he came out with the whole thing in saying that in Baltimore in specific, they only they only patrol, or they only go into black neighborhoods, period, or poor black neighborhoods,
Mhm.
period. That's the so you only can go there, look for drugs, and shake someone down that doesn't know their rights, and you can only go there to do it. And and that's part of the psyche. Like, if you're taught that this is the place that has all the drugs, this is the place, don't go over there, even they don't do nothing, stay in this place. And your psyche, you keep indoctrinating yourself in this, the same thing over and over and over again. You'll find that people are more aggressive to one set of people than they are to others.
Absolutely.
The same thing when blacks are pulled over 30% more than whites nationwide. You know, if you're always looking in black cars, I mean cars with black people in them. If you're always looking in those cars, of course you're going to find most of the fallacies. It's a numbers game, you know, in those cars.
You know what?
But
I think what got on my nerves most. I may have seen that same video because he was saying that you could pull somebody over and detain them just for about anything, because they're
right,
so
yeah,
well read in the law, supposedly, that for whether it be jaywalking, whether it be driving down the street, which is ridiculous. But I think what got on my nerves the most about all of this policing. Just like how you said, beyond the fact that they're in black and brown neighborhoods, but the fact that they had quotas, and I think that was another video that I saw where some cops from NYPD said that they actually have to have quotas, like an arrest quota, that if they don't get, then they'll get reprimanded, from their higher ups. Like what kind of world do we live in where you have where you have to have a certain number of incidents, and
right,
that's where the police became a little bit more, menacing, and that sort of thing. And that's part of the system. To your point earlier, that's part of the system that's been created to really for our neighborhoods, for black and brown folks, just so that they can have something to do, or have a quota to meet. And but it all comes from the top, man. There's spiritual wickedness in high places.
yeah. Um, at this point, everything that's happening in the world, well, in the country at this point, well, actually, it's truly the world, because you see Black Lives Matters protests happening in most parts of the free world. At this point, what do you think? What would you like to see?
Peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let's see. Um, okay, so I did put some thought into it. If the powers that be would just give us a platform for expression, and I know logistically this may not be the best, but in my mind, what would help to quell all the rioting, and all the looting and such, um, if you gave the people a platform and the powers that be were there to listen. So in my, I'm a bit of a dreamer, so walk with me on this one. But like, let's say for RFK Stadium in DC, hardly barely used, but that's a big wide platform. If you were to say, hey, everybody, if you want to raise your voice about systemic racism, we'll meet us there. But like, create a place, create a space. Like, okay, so what they did in Seattle, they took over an entire zone, just to say this it's an autonomous zone. They got rid of the police precinct. We just need a space and a place to be able to lift up our voice. If they were to have, so back to my RFK example, if we were to all meet at RFK, if they were to have live streaming video to whether it be 45 or whether it be some Congress members, and we can be assured that they are tuning in and watching, so we can raise our voice one by one. Like that's better than nothing. That's better than saying, okay, we don't know what to do. Because when you don't give us a chance to raise our voice or to give us a town hall about this, you get what you get. This is where all
Right.
of the unrest and the protests came from, because we don't have a space to say, hey, we need to talk to you. You're not listening. So if I feel like, in my mind, to answer the question, if the powers that be were to give us some kind of platform, some space where we can have this conversation, it's going to be a heated conversation. So be ready for the fire hose. But hey, that's better than not acknowledging, because that's what's happening right now. This is why we can't breathe, because they're not acknowledging, they're not hearing us. I've always said that when you're not listening to somebody, who's really at their wits end, that's like psychological air. I physically can't breathe. So, but when you give somebody, say, okay, let me hear what you're saying, that gives them a chance to breathe. So I don't know, just giving us a platform to really vocalize our contempt, and be ready for it, because it's coming. You know what I mean? That kind of thing.
Do you think we've been? Do you think we've been that we are past the point of talking? Um, do you think? I feel like this is how I feel. I'm just gonna be
Yeah.
perfectly honest with you, okay? Because it's just
Yeah,
me
yeah,
and you.
bring it real. Be real.
We have been we have been white splaining since the late 1960s, right? Like we have
Yep.
been, and I feel like the post MLK black leadership, right, has been walking in the footsteps of MLK, but not in the vision. And I'll say because, for instance, for instance, Apple, right? Anyone who knew of the company Apple when Jobs was alive, right, will attest to you and say, while they have continued the work of Apple, the vision that Jobs brought to Apple is really not there anymore,
Got it.
right? And
Mhm.
because Jobs had a way of producing this vision of what the company could be, right? And running after this vision of what the company could be, and that was the why of why he made the products that he made, because of a vision of what the company could be, which was the same as MLK. He had a vision of what America, or Black America, or the American dream could be, and he went after that dream. He went after that dream, and there were parts that made up that dream. The civil rights movement made up that dream, right? But then the economic movement that he began in 1967, right? But he didn't really get an opportunity to sink his teeth into before he got killed, right? And so, but that was a part of a much bigger dream. And I feel
Right.
like while we can continue to try to do, have the civil rights argument, I think the civil rights is specifically set in a time period, and which was the 60s. But if we're still having the same argument as the 60s, we kind of missed what it was Martin Luther King did in the first place, right? He had a vision, he had a dream, and a vision of what America, or what we could be, and he was going after that vision. And the specific things that he accomplished was to accomplish a much bigger idea of what the world, what the world is. And I think that these days we more concerned about the small accomplishments that he made, and continuing in the small fights, that we miss the much bigger picture. You know what I mean? And so
I do.
that's one of the things that I find, that I find somewhat frustrating about being black in America in 2020. You know what I'm saying? Because we really haven't, since the 52 years, is it 50? 52 years since Martin Luther King was killed.
Hmm.
Um, since the 52 years that he was killed, it really hasn't been a solid vision. No one has come up with a solid vision of what America looks like, what America should look like, and what America could look like if we win these small battles. Go ahead.
So back to the original thought. Is it's time for talk over. Um, I'm not. So let me just say for the record, I'm not one for violence necessarily. As a communicator, I'm one for talking. But here's what I will say. I am not mad at what they did in Seattle. That takeover situation where it was action. Because I hear what you're saying. To the point of are are we migrating away from MLK and moving more towards a Malcolm approach? Because if we're honest, Malcolm, he got some results too. I mean, it was
Sure.
his term was by any means necessary. Um, and again, in my dream state, in my dreamer state, I think I don't want to incite anything. I don't want to declare anything, but we should be at the hostage point, and I'll volunteer to be the negotiator. You know what I mean? So in a hostage situation, I think, as we know, and I'm just doing it from movies. There was always action. Somebody, they seized the place, and it was us versus them kind of thing, and it was
Sure.
it was standoff. But there was a need always for communication. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, before either side got worse, hey, listen, let there be a talk. You have your instigator. I'll pick up the phone. I'll talk to you. Let you know what our demands are, because we've already taken action. It's about to get even more severe unless our demands are met. I think I can see it in that way, because in my mind we need both. We need action. We do need action. But we do need communication as well. We do need to say, hey, listen, this is where we are. This is what these are the things that need to happen before things get worse. So I don't think we need to let go of one for the other. I think it does need to be a balanced approach to say, hey, listen, with action is being done, but I'm ready to talk about it. I'm ready. Let's continue this conversation as we go along, so
Right.
that you won't be left out. Because too much action is going to lead to destruction, and nobody wants that. Nobody needs that.
Right.
And to your point, too much talking without any action, there's just going to be no progress either. So I think it should be a balanced approach to that.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I didn't, I didn't want to insinuate that we should, uh, pick up our guns and fight tyranny. I'm saying that, I'm saying that do you think people are, let's say, tired of the
Oh
talk?
yeah.
Um, I think people are tired of the political show that happens, the political drama, let's say, where they put on a show but nothing really happens, but they sort of appeasement that happens, and so I think that we find that people are tired of just the talk. You know what I'm saying? Like, talk with action.
Got you. I got you.
Um, what in the moment that we're in right now, right? In the moment that we're in, I think we have a lot of momentum and a lot of strength in this particular moment. Um, what is it that you think we should be that because there's a lot of corporations that are giving the grants that are coming forth in this moment, a lot of money getting thrown in this direction. what do you think is our what's the move? What should we be doing in this moment when as we have the potential and we have the ear of most of everybody, and
Yeah.
it's like this isn't stopping, right? So there's there's protest every day, somewhere
Yeah.
every day. This isn't
Around the
ending
world, fam.
in the whole world. This isn't
Yeah.
ending. I'm sure there's a sector of people that wish we can go back to talking about things that concern them. But what do you think we should be doing in this moment?
We need to galvanize this movement. And God bless. We talk about him, to death, but God bless Martin Luther King. He was truly called to lead the movement. Obviously, he wasn't the only one.
Right.
He was the lightning rod. For all of this. He caught all of it. Um, but in a sense, but I feel particularly so that God called him to the movement. If you look at his biography, he just wanted to be a lowly pastor in Georgia. He
Right.
didn't ask, he didn't sign up for any of this. You know what I mean? But God called him, to help to galvanize this, to kind of lead us. As a Moses led the people. So I think you referenced it earlier. We do need strong leadership. Uh, dare I say, God called leadership. For somebody to help to organize. And I know that's a tough calling because who would want to sign up for that? Knowing that you would be the lightning rod, you would be the focal attention for all of this. But the point remains, we still need to make sure that all of our efforts are channeling in a certain direction. Okay, so we have the world's attention. Great. We have protests happening every day. That is terrific. So how do we take this momentum to the next steps? Okay, so yes, there's echoes of okay, we need to get back to the voting block to make sure that everybody votes because that is super important. I can't gloss over that. So voting is important. Making sure people in the right office is important. Making sure for our white brothers and sisters, making sure that you're calling out racism when you see it in your own family, in your own bias. Those things are important. But to kind of keep this momentum and this train moving, we need to make sure that it's galvanized, it's heading in a certain direction, so that it won't just be a huge flash in the pan. Just that we let all our anger out and then it goes back to normal. No, we need to. So it's going to take some bold steps, some bold leadership from people. That's above my pay grade. I don't know how that's going to happen, but so that's my vision for it. So I mean, there are a couple of people. There are a couple of smart people who are online who are saying that how the movement needs to move forward. But nobody really knows who they are necessarily. So somehow that just needs to be galvanized, needs to be organized, so that all of this movement, this entire movement, will be heading in the right direction.
We got a lot of people who don't believe. We have a lot of people, unfortunately, a lot of people who don't actually believe that racism is a thing, who don't believe that systemic racism in particular is a thing, who don't believe, who I guess think that millions of people on the streets are crying wolf. Um, you know, how how do you bring those people on the same page?
That tough question, question of the century. Um, but you know what? I have touched on this before, and the short answer is imagination. Okay. You mentioned it earlier when you said you knew some people in the justice system, judges, lawyers, police. That's not your position,
Right.
but and the key word is empathy. You said you empathize with them. You know what I mean? And in order to have empathy, you must have imagination.
Right.
I can put it in another context. I have no idea what it's like to be a woman. I don't. I'm born a male, but to understand a woman's perspective, I have to have a bit of imagination to figure out. Okay, if they're not getting paid as much as me, beyond just saying, okay, that sucks. I need to really imagine, like, no, what must that be like, for women to not get as paid as much as men and that sort of thing. I have no idea what it's like to be a white person, but I can imagine what it's like, that how what it feels like to receive privilege and my brothers and sisters not, like, you know what I mean. But so in order to establish empathy, you need imagination, and you need so for some to help somebody to understand that there is such a thing as systemic racism.
Right.
I don't know how to give somebody imagination. I don't know how to tell somebody you need to empathize, because empathize, that's exactly what it is. I'm seeing into somebody else's perspective. No, it didn't affect you. It didn't affect me. I don't know anybody else that in my immediate family that is affected, but I can imagine it.
Right.
Therefore I can empathize with it. So
Right.
how to grain and drill that into somebody. I don't know, man. You know, that's I don't know if that's an innate thing. I don't know if imagination or empathy can be taught, but I mean, I'm here for it. I'll tell them. I'll educate them as best I can, man.
Honestly, I think I have another position, and it's a position that I don't know that I've ever heard anybody have, with the exception of myself, and I could be corrected. It could be somebody else that has this position. We're not going to win people. We're not going to win over people who are convinced that the way things are is perfectly fine. Right? I don't think a conversation or 100 conversations or talks over and over and over will win people who believe the system is fine the way it is. And it's because their life is fine the way it is. And you can't, you can't make people feel like the world is bad when they feel like the world is good. And while I think that the I think that the point of I think that revealing the world to people, right, doesn't necessarily doesn't necessarily work in changing their mind. And so for me, I feel like there in everything in this, there are going to be winners and there are going to be losers, and you just got to pick the team. And if you don't understand why the Confederate flag was a bad thing, you are okay on the losing team, right? Like, you lost once, you're okay on the losing team. And 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 I think the biggest point is that we don't that we have to win out against racism, period, regardless of who's on which side. It's not. I don't think it is any longer our job to go grab people and tell them why the world shouldn't function this way and how the world should really function, more so than just begin changing the world. Like it or not, you're just gonna lose this particular argument, and you're gonna feel like whites are losing their position of power in America or whatever it is. I don't know what it is. Those are just guesses on non-whites, but I mean non-blacks. Excuse me, non-black guesses is that whites are worried about their position in America, and whites are worried about this, and I don't really know what it is, but I know that this particular thing has gone on for entirely too long, and I think that if we don't. And I think that there are atrocities, and not to say that America is bad all the way around, but there are atrocities committed in America justified through the scope of racism, and it is both covert and overt, and it's prison, industrial prison complex, and like this is an atrocity in which we can either figure it out that it's an atrocity now, or figure it out when that atrocity becomes a worldwide thing later, right? We can either figure it out now that this is terrible, or we can figure it out later when it blows up in our face. And so, and things blow
So
up in our face. Slavery led to civil war, right? So while we may have been able to justify slavery uh, through the eyes of racism, it blew up. It literally caused this country to almost be split. And so, I think that it's time is, like, I don't know that trying to talk things out, or trying to explain things away, or trying to get people to see things from another, I don't know if that even matters anymore. Like, it doesn't. I don't know if that is the way to go. I don't think talking works. And I'm not suggesting that, violence, but I'm saying that, taking the opportunity that's put in our face right now, right? While corporations are on our side right now, while we take these opportunities, do we believe that every corporation that has claimed to be on the Black Lives Matter side is really on Black Lives Matter side? No. However, this is the opportunity to get them to do what you want while you got their attention. You know what I'm saying? Because you're gonna lose their attention if you don't make some moves right this second in this particular moment. We're gonna lose their attention. President Trump today did an executive order as far as police, whatever the executive order was, as far as police. It is not that he wanted to, right? It's not that he wanted to. He doesn't. He doesn't have a choice. And in that moment, like right now, you don't have a choice but to move in the direction, because the people run this country. So you don't have a choice but to move into this particular direction. You're just going to be the loser as far as your opinion on how things are, or where America could be great again and all of that stuff. On the flip side of that, he's definitely going to taunt that he won this particular battle because he's the one that, brought change to America. I don't give a crap. He's going to be president only for a few more months or a few more years. I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care if he takes all the credit in the world. Just give us what we need, period.
So to your point, I actually I see what you're saying. Talking, yeah, it doesn't yield a lot of benefits. So one of my favorite shows, Adam Ruins Everything.
Yeah.
He talked about that sometimes, where you could present facts in certain people's faces, and I think the term is like cognitive dissonance, where you could put the information plain as day for some people, and for whatever reason, it has a reverse effect. It makes them dig back into their own belief even more so. It's just weird that way. People's minds are weird. They could be dead wrong, and you can prove to them why they're wrong, and they still won't jump side. And no matter how you can talk to, you're blue in the face. And so I think you're right. That talking yields very little benefit. Um, I had to put on my Christian hat now. Um, so Jonah, it was a racist. Jonah, who was supposed to go to Nineveh, but yet he tried to go the other way, got swallowed by a big fish and all that.
Right.
Well, if you look at the text carefully, he didn't want to talk to it was those people. He didn't want to get those people
Sure.
the word of God, and that's a racist point of view. And only God could intervene and make it so that he had to do it, and the people were saved, that sort of thing. So the Christian side of me sees that in order for people's minds and hearts to be changed, not just their minds, but their hearts to be changed, it's going to take a God-sized intervention. I believe the Spirit of God. Not to say that we need to all be street preachers and that sort of thing, but the fact that if any change is going to happen, it has to be God led and God done, or else because I could talk, Mark could talk all day, but I'm not going to convince anybody. But if God does the talking, or if He does the moving somehow, and this is going to be a tough move, but that's on God's shoulders, not mine. The last thing I'll say, and I appreciate how you brought in corporations. That's to the Mark side of it. Like, maybe if we talk money to them, maybe
Sure.
if we let them see that Black Lives Matter is because money is a big thing for corporation. And to your point, I think that's why corporations are doing it now, because they don't want to lose any more money. You know what I mean? But So
We
I'm just
represent
I'm just trying
1.4
to,
trillion dollars of the market.
you know what I mean? So they don't they would be wise. You know, they're not dumb to lose that. So you know, I'm just trying to re-strategize, recalibrate the conversation. Like, okay, maybe if we talk money to them, maybe we'll try to recap that. That'll be the thing to get them to switch their thinking. I don't know, you know, but you know, definitely it has to be, you know, God be the main thing would change their heart, and maybe money would change their mind. I don't know.
Listen, we're running low on our time here, but I want to give you the floor to close it out. That's, you know, like I want to give you a moment to have the floor to close it out. Tell me your final thoughts. Tell me your final. Everybody hears my opinion all the time because my opinion doesn't change.
I appreciate that. I mean, what we're doing is important. You know, we're pushing the conversation forward, and as well as I know you and you know me, like we're even willing to listen. And I mean, I just wish that's what we would do more so in this world today. You know, yes, as a communications professor, I'm all about trying to communicate, even though it doesn't work in all spaces. But just the fact that we just all need to listen to one another. We do need to have these level-headed conversations. And here's the thing: we may not always agree. You know, I may have a stance that you know you don't particularly get down with, but don't let that you know ruin progress. Don't let that ruin our love for each other. You know what I mean? And the one final thing I'll say is you know we definitely can't be infected with hate. You know, it should not be an us versus them. You know, it should be us versus the system, us versus you know the root of all evil. You know, we need to get down to those kind of things. The only way to not get sucked into that hate, to not get sucked into that despair, is to have God in your heart, man. That's my final message. You know, it's going to be tough in these last days and times to make sure that God is in your heart, but make sure He's in your heart because He's full of love. He'll make you see, and He'll give you thoughts to think. He'll make you see things differently. He'll give you thoughts to think, and that's the only way that we're going to survive, man. That's what I got.
Well, man, thank you very much for once again. Of course, you know, we're not together today, but once
Right,
again,
right.
being a part of this of the Elevation podcast, and I appreciate you very much.
Man, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me, man. I really do. Really appreciate it.
No problem. And that's it. This is the Elevation Podcast. My name is Shawn Riff-Raff. I am thankful that you joined us. I hope that you guys will keep the conversation going. Stay a part of this conversation. We're gonna keep it going. We're gonna keep it open. Keep it going. Keep marching. Stay on the streets. Don't focus on any one particular thing. So marching is important. It's very important. Staying on the streets and keeping people aware of what's going on is important. Voting is important. It is not more important than marching. It's equally important to marching. So do both. Voting, spending your money the right place. Make sure you only go in places that support you. So your money, your voting, your marching, your praying, they're all equally important. Pray for your leaders. Pray for the people on the streets. Go to God on their behalf. It's all equally important. Thank y'all very much. This is the Elevation Podcast. My name is Shawn Riff-Raff. See you next.
King. Royalty, stand up, brand up, fam up, hand out, no way, hands up, know what, name that, it's mine, claim that, it's time, message, we shine, above all, the decline, the darkness cannot last, the shadow of my past, before I gain knowledge of heritage, I have the bloodline that I share, most powerful out here, the mover of mountains is who I am touting, the richest among us is who I'm the son of, from sundown to sun up, that's how I become up, position is just mine, the favor in due time, can't have it, man, you lying, the powerless, you trying, enemy beneath me, there's nothing to teach me, the people receive me, cause my God complete me, and my God does keep me, and my God they free me, and my God redeem me, and my God relieve me, I'm king, the million crown me, I am winning my position, God's giving, God's in it.